Hi everyone, welcome to Elektro Vox. Today I have the mysterious artist known as Morris Black, who seems to be the rising star in the industrial world at the moment, especially in the UK. Today we are fortunate enough to be able to call him Brian. So Brian, thank you very much for joining us.
Thanks so much for having me.
So for those rare people who don't know your music in the industrial scene, how would you describe your music to them? And what sounds, but more importantly, what emotions define what is Morris Black?
I have just perpetually been interested in electronic music for the reason that it's their sounds that did not exist in our real world, and we just pulled them out of the ether and brought these alien sounds to a new world. Like I think this. I also grew up on metal back in the day, and being able to hear a guitar, just what I would associate a guitar with, just has always appealed to me. It always felt unknown and unsettling almost. Even music that's supposed to be happy and like dancey, it still just felt foreign, and I've always loved it. I always like this the two kind of like aesthetics and sounds I feel like I pull most from are the new like cyberpunk movement and more of like occult, gothy industrial type of sound. It's basically warehouse rave music for towns that are still run by doomsday cults.
Yeah, nice. I can totally see that, because the kind of whole aspect of cyberpunk is that sort of end of the world doomsday cult, so it does make a lot of sense. With the mask persona you portray, can you tell us some more about the inspiration from where that came from and what it signifies, and sort of how did Morris Black start, and does that sort of revolve around what you've just said?
It actually does. I guess I always wanted to remove the human from the creation of this music. Honestly, when I first started out this project, I had planned on just remaining anonymous and having just the masked character, and almost like a form of like kayfabe, like with like wrestling or something, where I like stay in that character the whole time. And it didn't work out that way, because I have my own personality that kind of just broke through what Morris Black is. But it's my original intent still holds true for live performances in particular. I kind of like being this strange creature that was like formed by arcane magic, that's up on the stage and playing this haunting music, and it helps create this bigger experience for people. And that's some of my favorite shows. Growing up, had like big atmospheres that they brought with them, and it just felt like being taken to another world. And that's basically what I wanted to create with Morris Black.
With your mask, obviously it's a very distinct mask, so is there a specific reason for the way it looks?
The most important feature to it for me was that it didn't have any human features. There was no face, there's no eyes. Like almost like a creature that doesn't see the way we see, is able to kind of see past what our human perception can let us view. Because a creature like that, something that doesn't have a face, that's not human, it's still perceiving the world around them, but it would be a completely alien experience to anybody experiencing that without the proper like mental preparation. So that having a creature that is interprets the world differently, that is how, like, what I try to bring into my music. Why I want the sounds itself to be completely unique. I pride myself on creating like most of my own sounds that I use within my music, building everything from scratch. Especially when you start out writing music. I was writing music for about maybe like a decade before Morris Black happened, and I will never share any of that music because it was awful and I didn't know what I was doing. And part of it was playing around with synthesizers and not really understanding how they worked. Yeah, well, I'll get. I think you have a question about this later, but you know, helping like discover like the new tools that I understood better and that I could work more to my advantage and really study and really get under the hood and understand what they do, so I could really bring something different to the table. Especially right now, there's a million cyberpunk artists out there that are like doing this kind of like sound or whatever, and being able to create things from scratch, like even if I'm not trying, puts my thumbprint on it, which is very important to me.
Definitely. I mean, because the first few times your image came up in the mask and the very impressive pictures you've got, you
That's
know,
my photographer, Teddy Petrosky, Epsilon Arts. Feel like I need to just give him a quick shout.
of course, well, it's some great work. Because so like the first time I sort of saw you, my imagination went, oh, you know, like the Purge films, especially with the mid-tempo sort of cyberpunk feel that you have. So for you to say that there's like a sort of a creature disconnection that perceives the world that way, that's a very different perspective I'd never considered. So that just adds a nice extra layer to your music there.
Yeah, I've always been like really obsessed with like cosmic horror, like, you know, this kind of stuff that like, you know, H.P. Lovecraft started, you know, the idea of like horrors that we can't comprehend, and that interest in particular has like woven its way into most of my music.
Yeah,
One
definitely see that.
of my favorite authors is a guy named Thomas Ligotti, who does that kind of like mind-bending cerebral horror, and a lot of my work has been influenced from like just reading that and interpreting it in my head.
Okay, cool. Um, and now slightly different. It's a bit strange to me that, you know, when I look on Spotify and your Facebook followers, they're much lower than I would expect, because, you know, you seem to have this cult following. Because I don't know if it's right to say in other places in the world, but especially in the UK, you've become the main pillar of the cyberpunk music, you know, across our scene. It's really hard to find an industrial electronic playlist on YouTube now that doesn't have at least one or two of your songs mixed in. It's kind of hard to escape you now. So
It's wild to me.
yeah, and it seems with such a loyal cult following, you've not only worked on remixes of a lot of other artists. You know, you've worked with ESA, Aesthetic Perfection, Biomechanical recently, you know, Hatari and Bashar Murad, to name a few. And not only did you, you know, dedicate an album, all of these remixes to people, but they in turn have, you've got two remix versions of your original, the irregularity of being, right?
Yeah.
So it seems like almost every artist out there wants to work with you as well. So who would you say has been your favorite artist to work with, and which artists have put a spin on some of your tracks that you would have never seen coming or envisioned direction wise?
Well, some of my earliest like success with exposure and with this whole project was when I released my EP, Femmes de l'Obscurite. Which was 4 tracks based on different horror movies at the time that I was very fond of, still am. And 2 of those tracks were collaborations with artists that were kind of doing a similar sound to what I was doing around the same time. When I first started this project, a lot of these like mid-tempo cyberpunk electro EDM artists who were just like starting, kind of were networking, and 2 artists that I really loved and became friends with, Into the Pale Abyss and Cable. And that was my first like real experience in collaborating and putting together a new idea with the help from others. And it really kind of opened my mind to the whole process of collaborating. And what I loved about it is that I just felt like I learned so much from seeing how other people worked. I actually happened, Into the Pale Abyss is from Quebec City, Canada, and I actually was playing a show up there while we were writing that song. So we got to like actually sit in the studio and work on it. Just understanding other people's processes have been great. And for my album that followed that, I got to work with a lot of vocalists that I had been fans of for years. I've been listening to Shiver, the Pete Crane's project for, damn, since I'm 30. I was like listening to that when I was in college. You know, I was just like so obsessed with his voice. And actually, he was the first person to sign any of my music to his label, Blind Mice Productions. He was like kind of the first guy to give me a shot. And I remember I was like so hesitant about asking him to like throw down vocals on a track because, you know, I admired him so much that if he was going to do that for me, I wasn't about to bring any weak shit to him. You know, I needed to really bring a crunchy, heavy track that's exactly, you know, what I think this music project is. And that's kind of how Erase This Place came together, which I think is still one of my favorite songs that I've done to this day. You know, a lot of, you know, if I need to show people what Morris Black is, I always feel like that's a pretty good place to start. You know, similarly, Amelia Arsenic, Angel Spit was one of my favorite artists back when I was like really like first getting into industrial. And yeah, she was actually one of like the first people to like give me support. And I just remember being like so nervous to talk to like someone that I'd been listening to for a while. And
Yes.
Working with her was great because, you know, she brought her own set of influences and helped kind of like put the track together and write it. It's been a pleasure to work with so many different artists, and there's like collaborations I'm working on now that I wish I could talk about, but there's going to be some like really heavy hitting songs coming your way.
Yeah. Okay. Well, you mentioned Amelia Arsenic. I think my favorite song of yours is Upgrade Me, obviously.
Oh, thank you.
Featuring her. But yeah, she is like, once we're on that topic, she is such a wonderful person, because I think Angel Spit was probably some of the first industrial I ever heard as a kid, and I had no idea what it was. You know, it was only years later that I put two and two together.
Yeah.
But my first ever video interview, I wasn't expecting to do video interviews. I asked Aesthetic Perfection if they'd be cool if I came down and had a word with them. Ended up videoing them, Priest, who'd never had a video interview, and then Amelia. And Amelia was the nicest, I think, friendliest interview I've ever had. Like, she offered me and my camera lady a beer, and just like, you know, so yeah, it's nice to see that she's still, you know, quite an influential part of the industrial scene. So
yeah, you know, just a few days ago, she Amelia had sent a belated Christmas gift to my girlfriend and I of just food from Australia, just out of nowhere. She's the sweetest person.
Ah, that's great. So which also part of that, which artists that have worked on your music have taken your music in a direction you never considered?
Yeah, part of me hates to like play any favorites here, because every artist I've asked to like remix my work has just been incredible and put something new and fresh. And, you know, I was pulling artists from, you know, the kind of more the EDM sector, and like the industrial artists that I love. Like, you know, I got Cyanotic to work on my music, and that's someone I've been a fan of for longer than I can remember. A couple ones that I kind of wanted to highlight from maybe slightly lesser known artists. Goreflesh put a black metal spin on Erase This Place that was just so fucking gnarly. You know, before he started, he was like, "Hey man, does your label have like any restrictions? Like, do they want like a club track, or can I just kind of go balls to the wall and make a straight up black metal track?" I'm like, "Man, you just go with your heart, do something big." And the results were incredible. You know, similarly, Hakes took the same song and they turned it into kind of like a goth trap song. You know, I'm a huge fan of trap music and hip hop, and getting to see that like worked into my sound is just wonderful. And in some cases, artists will almost bring the track to a point that I didn't see the potential in the track, and they did. Truly significant is a artist who does kind of like the whole like mid-tempo electro cyberpunk type of style music. You know, he's a good friend of mine, and I'm so happy he made the time to work on a remix of The Violence, which is my track off The Irregularity of Being that features Slider. And he sent me the track back, and I listened to him like, this is what The Violence was supposed to be. Like, this is what the track was. what I did is fine, but he brought the track to where it needed to be. And I actually now only play that version when I play live. I've kind of like scrapped the original and I just made his remix canon, basically.
I think that is a sign of a very good artist as well, because often than not in the industrial scene, a remix can be far better than the original. And, you know, it takes a lot for an artist to say, yeah, okay, their version, that's what it should have been. Because I think there's a lot of artists out there who probably will backtrack a bit and be like, oh, well,
Yeah.
A couple of my friends had some questions for you. Russ, he asked about how your sound has evolved over time and what inspirations and directions were there along the road that changed its course. So where did you get to the point that, this will be my sound moment? For example, he mentions that some remixes from the Exile tape sound more like your current work without some of the stronger defined characteristics that you've built up over the years. So
yeah. Okay, yeah, actually, I can tell you exactly where my sound shifted, basically. And that's back to the Femmes EP that I talked about earlier. I had my first two releases with Blind Mice Productions, and that was me kind of finding my sound. I think most people, unless you're a absolute prodigy, your first couple of releases is you just kind of like pulling from, disparate sources of music that you like and just kind of putting together. You want to break all the rules, you want to make something that is uniquely you, and it's usually a little bit jumbled, and that's kind of how I would describe my first two releases. I was also working with a synthesizer software synth called Massive. It was like a very popular EDM and popular for all electronic music. And I never figured out how to use it. Like I had like a tertiary understanding of it, but it just didn't make sense. It just wasn't intuitive to me. So I would I would watch like tutorials on how to do it, never really picked it up. I would take like presets and kind of work them, and then take those sounds and post-process them to hell to kind of make something more along the lines of what I wanted to be. I then decided I wanted to try out new synths because I was kind of getting tired of it, and I discovered Serum from Expert, which is what I use in the majority of my music today. It's very powerful, and the thing is, it just made sense to me. Like after 2 weeks, I basically could open it up, as a blank patch and make whatever sound I want. And I almost felt like I wasted years on this previous synth that I couldn't get to work, and it sounded like shit anyway. I feel like I can always tell when someone's using a Massive synth. No offense to anybody who uses Massive. I'm sure your music is great, but in general, it just doesn't sound very good. And so once I was able to get a better understanding of how the insides of a synthesizer works and how to make it do what I want, I was able to create the music that I wanted to share. And that is the first release that was done completely in Serum. I think after that, I released Exile tapes, which was a collection of tracks that I was working on during my previous releases. So those are still all done with Massive. But after that, everything was done in Serum, and it had the sound I wanted. So it was kind of the discovery of Serum, but also the explosion of like kind of mid-tempo EDM and that sound really took off around that time. Like what kind of inspired me initially was the song Pursuit from Gesaffelstein, because I was like really into my rave years at that point when that came out. Like I kind of seen industrial as just like a phase I went through back in when I was a kid. But when I heard Pursuit, it brought all of those elements from industrial and techno that I used to love into this new environment. And I just kind of had this like, aha moment that I could have both things. I could have my EDM, I could have industrial and put it together. And also around that time, artists like Blank and 1788L were exploding up on SoundCloud, and that's kind of where my first any start of success came, from SoundCloud and that community. And when those artists were kind of bringing that heavy dubstep sound into that like really chugging you know, heavy, grinding cyberpunk sound. That's when I'm like, yes, this is the direction I want to go in. My music needs to be heavier. It needs to be louder. It needs to be angrier, and I need to show the world like what I'm doing.
I definitely get a sense for that when you say you get angry and stuff, because so we'll let the audience know here that my friend Jack put up a status about Morris Black saying something along the lines of, why is it every time I discover a new song that absolutely slaps, it's always got Morris Black involved in it somehow. And obviously I was able to send you the screenshot, and yeah,
that made my day.
Yeah, so it does seem that sort of everywhere you look there is Morris Black, but this is a fantastic thing. And I think the heavier you get, I think the more crazy my friends and everyone sort of that is in the industrial scene gets. I mean, for instance, Russ that did ask that question, he also wants me to let you know that he says your music is incredible to have sex to.
I have done my job.
Yeah, right. My work here is done.
Just out here trying to get people laid.
That's what club life is, right? Okay. And so also just quickly on that note of sound, Connell also asks similarly, how do you settle on the sounds for your tracks, and where do you find the inspiration that to choose the sounds that you do? I mean, he's got into music production recently, and you're sort of his biggest inspiration at the moment. So
yeah, I guess most of the sound, especially where I am today, and like where I've been since kind of discovering that I want to be heavier and heavier, I've always just had an obsession with like distortion, you know. I loved metal music when I was a kid, you know, black metal and death metal were my shit. And I just loved that loud, heavy sound. And then, you know, I discovered industrial, which had these, you know, really dissonant vocals and these like wild electronics I'd never heard of. And then like the dubstep explosion happened in 2010s. And I know it's still trendy to talk about how terrible dubstep is, but you know what? Fuck everybody. Dubstep is awesome. It still is. It was then. Yeah. And it was just this new frontier for heavy music. And I loved it. I was like, this is what electronic music can do these days. Also at that time, that was during like when back in the clubs, it was just future pop and aggro tech, just 24/7. That's all we played, and I just got real annoyed and bored. So I was like, oh, what's going on over here? Everybody's talking about this Skrillex guy. Let's check this out. Yeah, and it just completely blew my mind.
I'm not afraid to say that, you know, the Korn and Skrillex mashup album was probably one of the best albums.
It's so good. Yeah, it's so good.
Must have listened to that hundreds of times over. So
same here. I loved it. I still pick it up every once in a while.
Okay, so Brian, what can you tell us about the new album in the works?
Okay, I do have like an album started. It's really coming together. I probably have like 10 tracks started. I'm definitely moving. I'm not losing any of the heaviness, but I've been experimenting with bringing out like more melodic and kind of like lush soundscapes, just to make a bigger world for my heavy bass lines to tear through, you know. Definitely influenced by synthwave on this, and you know that entire genre is about creating sound into reality and bringing you to a different time period. And so I've been experimenting a lot with melody and, you know, some even like orchestras and things like that. And also just pushing how heavy can I make these goddamn basses? Like how crunchy can I get them? I'm like sitting there for hours playing with, you know, tiny little settings that nobody else would hear. Just like I just get it 1 decibel louder, just a little bit angrier.
I think that does describe your music in one word. Actually, it's crunchy, but in that good way where you just go crunchy. So yeah, I mean, obviously, I'm looking forward to reviewing the new album when it comes out. And
Yeah.
because I think you put up a status again recently, like saying that it was absolutely going to kick the ass of everything you've made so far. So
I've definitely a lot of the stuff I'm working on right now, or things that I've finished. It's definitely going to be taking me into a new chapter in what I do. I've been very slow about working on my album just because I really want it to be something big, something special. You know, my first album, I'm proud of it. I love it. It was basically just kind of a showcase of what I can do and the sounds that I'm interested in, and you know how I interpret those sounds. This I think is going to be I hesitate to say a concept album, but something that just feels uniquely whole, and that's what I'm going for. I also want to bring in different talented producers and vocalists to help kind of break it into this next level. I'm very excited about it, and you know, trying out different genres and speeds that you have not heard from me yet. And I'm trying faster music. That's been really fun, actually. Just like a lot heavier and faster music.
I mean, working with the amount of artists that you have remix wise, you must have had so many sort of different roads of industrial to sort of experience. So I can't even begin to imagine if you were going to take it in directions we've not heard before. I can't even begin to imagine, you know, where that would go. So yeah,
Definitely there's a lot of different genres, especially in the EDM world, that have been like popping off recently that I've just been interested in trying here and there. So, you know, I'll spend a little time like listening to like a different genre, like acid is kind of coming back recently. There's like this type of music called hard wave, which is kind of like a combination of like heavy trap and dubstep with like trance music. It's fucking awesome. I love it. And when I hear these things, I get kind of obsessed with it. I'm like, I can do that. Like I have the tools to do this. Why not give it a shot? And sometimes I play around with it. I'm like, oh, this is a song. This is definitely a song. And all these tracks have been just kind of working together, and it's been a really great experience. But I also have about 7 songs, collaborations, and a small EP that I need to get done before that. So I work on too many things. It's pathological.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that again in a minute. So,
but I love what I do. This is not my only job at the moment, but I work this hard because I want it to be the only thing that I do, and I want to bring people more of, you know, what's going on up here.
Yeah, so we'll come back to that, like how hard you work, in a minute. There's just a couple of more things I was going to say first. So in regards to your music, you've been doing some lessons on Twitch for people to watch along. Is that right?
Yes, I have.
So could you tell us a bit more about that? Because I mentioned it to a couple, like, so Connell there, who asked about, you know, your sounds. I said, you do know he does these Twitch streams, right? So if you could tell us a bit more about that.
Yeah, it's so this basically this started from for 2 reasons. I live in Boston now, but I was living in Connecticut for most of my life. And shortly before I moved here, I had a job helping my friend teach music production for an after-school thing. You know, so one of my friends reached out. He was, because like, okay, in Connecticut is a barren wasteland for the arts. It's a nice place to raise your family if that's your thing, but if you're trying to like make it in any type of art, there's no fucking culture there. So just a lot of white picket fences and farmers markets. So he reached out to me. He's like, hey, I've been listening to your music and you clearly know what you're doing. So would you like a job just helping like assist in teaching these after school class? It was mostly focused on like kind of like more like hip hop and trap music, which thankfully I was also just very into at the time and experimenting with. So I found a lot of pride helping people do that. You know, kind of find that passion. And when I was like younger, you know, before the internet, it was as expansive as it was today, before YouTube, Music production was just so it was almost like locked behind gate and key, you know. It was kind of hard to figure out how to make that music. You could buy expensive synthesizers, but so, you know, if you don't have the money, I mean, it's a little debilitating. I kind of wish I knew earlier where to start and how to make this music. And I guess I felt like growing up, a lot of these artists that I love, you know, electronic artists in the industrial community, like were very, very, very quiet about how they made their music. I don't know if it's just, you know, it doesn't interest them to talk about it, or, you know, they felt it's a secret they needed to protect. But my goal with the Twitch streams has been demystifying the process of music. You know, anyone who wants to make music should be able to. It should be as easy as picking up a guitar. But sometimes it can be scary just because there's software involved, and it is a complicated form of music to write because you can't just write it. You have to also be good at like understanding like audio concepts. You need to understand how to mix things. It's definitely daunting, but I've learned that, you know, if you want to learn how to do it, it's not as easy, not as hard as you think. And if you have someone there to like just kind of walk you through the first few steps, it does make everything a lot easier.
Exactly so, because I've actually been thinking about making music myself, and whenever I've asked, I've kind of had three different responses. The main response is very much like no, because like you say, some industrial artists are very guarded. Others are like, yeah, if you just go get this software and these sound packs, I'm like, yeah, I'm not going to go spend 500 quid on something I don't know how to use. And then the third one is again like someone trying to be overly helpful, but in such a way that I don't actually learn anything. So yeah. In regards to, are you going to do any more of these learning how to streams, or
yeah, definitely.
Are they on YouTube already, the ones you've already done?
So they say on my Twitch for 2 weeks. I'm starting to like prepare some like tutorials that I can post up on YouTube that people can access anytime. They're kind of sporadic when I do it, just because, you know, I balance my work with making music, and also, you know, I work a 40-hour-a-week job, which fucking blows. And when I'm able to, I like to just, you know, show the general like process of like how I work. And also I'm like planning on launching a Patreon in the near future, where, you know, a big part of it is I'm going to be giving away like samples, presets for different synthesizers.
Oh, nice.
Specifically Serum and Vital, which are the ones I use the most. And also Vital, the reason I'm doing Vital specifically is because Vital is fucking free. So that's one of the best things about that, is you can get started with a free synth. And especially if you have, you know, already presets from someone making the type of music that you like already, you can just right off the bat start playing around with music. You know, first thing you make doesn't have to be a masterpiece, but, you know, once you like kind of get into the groove of how to like, you know, just like place the drums and place synthesizers and like, you know, actually play notes, you know, making your first loop, the first just loop of music is the most gratifying thing in the world. And if that hooks you, then you're just going to keep doing it.
Yeah, so I'll be sure to obviously share that on my Elektro Vox page whenever you're doing another one. So everyone, obviously, if they follow your page, they'll probably be able to see that clearer. But whilst we're also on this subject of creativity, so I've already shown you some of these. So my friend Kat, she didn't have a question, but she did say she wanted to show you the artwork.
Yeah, that was awesome.
Done. So I'm just going to screen share that, so obviously people can see. Just have a quick go through those. So yeah, these are some of the images that Kat's made. She goes by Queen Cordite on Facebook. And yeah, these are all just the things she's come up with whilst listening to your music.
I love that one in particular.
Yeah, I mean the whole Plague Doctrine, that just sums up 2020 and it all in one, doesn't it? Really? So
I wish it didn't, but it does.
Yeah. So yeah, and obviously you're inspiring a lot of people with so many remixes. So it is really nice to see that even though you haven't been around that long per se, you're having an incredible effect on the industrial world. So it's very nice to see that.
I'm as surprised as anybody, but I'm happy to be here.
Fair enough. And you were just saying there about a minute ago about working really hard, like doing many things. I mean, the Jack screenshots I mentioned earlier, where he's saying you're involved in almost every song. He kind of joked, just for the sake of everyone watching, he kind of joked that, you know, should someone check on Morris Black, is some sort of malevolent lunatic keeping him like trapped in a basement working on music 24/7. The malevolent maniac turns out to be yourself, doesn't it?
It is me. I'm that lunatic.
Yeah, and I've noticed you've mentioned online that you do end up working on like a dozen tracks at a time. So the important question here is music your escape from reality or your way of connecting to reality in a more physical way?
That is an excellent question. And even after this is a question you gave me ahead of time, and I am not entirely sure because I feel like I when I'm making my music, I just get completely lost in it. And you know, it's part of the reason I work on so many different things is, you know, not every time I open up Ableton, my DAW of choice, it's not just to like work on the song I was working on yesterday. Sometimes, you know, I just open up a blank file and just write whatever. Sometimes I have a goal like, oh, I want to do this genre, or, you know, I want to try, you know, this kind of method. But I just kind of, you know, start making sounds and put it together, and I'll usually work on it for like a couple hours and then shut it, and then I won't think about it for a while, and I'll open the file, you know, maybe 2 weeks later, be like, oh, is this anything good? And I'll open it up and go, oh shit, I actually have something here. I can turn this into something. And so I wind up spending a few more hours on that and put aside the other tracks I'm supposed to be working on, and then suddenly I'm just in a pile of files, and I really need to focus on get them all done. But I want to work on them, like all of them. And
So
yeah.
would you say, because obviously I'm kind of the same when I have articles to do, you know, I'm happy doing them, but when I realize I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, you know, so when it comes to this making music where you end up working on multiple tracks at a time, is it a case of, you know, once it's out of your head, once you're writing, it's a good stress relief? Or do you end up finding that you end up just stressing yourself out making so many tracks?
The music making part does not stress me out. It's the business end of music, you know, preparing for releases, writing press releases. I fucking hate writing press releases. I love playing shows. I really do, and I'm very happy that you know, at least in our country, things are opening up a little bit. I'm starting to plan tours. 2020 was supposed to be my year to really pop off. I was going to go on tours throughout North America. I had some festivals lined up, but you know, everything just shut down. So I totally just lost my train of thought. So when I'm playing live shows, I love it, but like the preparation for that really stresses me out because, you know, I want everything to be perfect. You know, people are gonna take time out of their busy lives to come out and see me play. I want it to be something special. I want it to be something they're thinking about the next day, the next week, the next month, you know?
Yeah.
At the music writing part, if I actually just recently started working with a manager, which has been a lifesaver because he helps me keep organized in you know, booking and business end of that part of my life, and I can just, like, you know, get really lost in the music that I make.
Okay, yeah, and you just mentioned live music there. So obviously in the UK, the only music we're kind of allowed at the moment has been sort of small sit-down concerts that have only just started. But you played a show, was it in California?
Yeah, San Francisco.
And it looked like you guys were pulling out all the bells and whistles and like sparing no expense. So how was playing live show in a sort of COVID era over there?
Oh my God, it was strange. I mean, just like showing up to a venue and like walking around after, you know, wearing my mask for hell, just like from getting off the airplane, you know, where I'm still, you know, they're very strict obviously in airports, and they should be, about mask wearing. So, you know, being able to go to a venue, take my mask off and just know like, holy shit, this big empty room is going to be filled with people. Do you remember people? I don't remember people, but apparently they exist and they've been wanting to go to shows. And it was a almost sold out show to my knowledge. You know, it was packed. You could just feel it in the air that like people have been like waiting for this, and this was a big catharsis for so many people, because this was the grand reopening of the DNA Lounge, which also fucking crazy to me that not only was I playing the DNA Lounge, but playing the big reopening after COVID. Because like that, when I was, you know, first into industrial music when I was younger, I remember like reading about DNA Lounge and like, you know, seeing what crazy shows were coming there. I knew it was like kind of like an industrial mecca up there. So I always wanted to play it. I just never thought this would be the scenario. And also just, it was honestly just one of the best shows I've ever played. I've never had, this is the first time I had that the entire audience was jumping with the beat for the entire set. You know, I was just like looking over like a wave of people, and
Oh wow.
yeah, it was like one of those moments where I just kind of remembered like, yeah, this is what I love doing. This is the exactly what I want to be doing, and I just can't believe that people love it as much as I do, you know?
Yeah, I mean, you did share some footage of it on Facebook, so if possible, if you could send that over, if you've got a copy, I'll add it into this.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And not only that, but you did quite a large online show recently as well. I mean, it was a Monster Visit Industrial. Was that your event or?
Oh yeah, I've been able to do a few. I've been kind of staying away a little bit from streaming performances in 2021. I did a lot during like, you know, the high point of the pandemic, or low point, whatever, however you want to look at it. And you know, that was, you know, a good way to kind of like at least halfway connect to my fans, and you know, that part of my music career that I unfortunately had to put on hold. Everyone had to put on hold. But in 2021, I really wanted to take a break from that. I wanted to focus just on writing. Like right out the gate in January, I remember like ESA hit me up for a remix, and Goreflesh wanted a remix, and a couple of others, and I really wanted to get to it. I had some collaborations I needed to finish up from the last year, so I was like, no more streaming for the moment. I'm just going to focus on music writing. And I kind of came back for one of my buddies who runs a goth night in Cincinnati, Ohio, called Darkotica. It was his big birthday bash, and he was doing a 29-hour stream and wanted me to headline it. And he's just the most wonderful dude. Actually, he gave me this awesome shirt because he branded himself with a Hot Topic tramp stamp, and now Hot Topic sends him as much free merch as he wants. Yeah, so if you ever want Hot Topic branded merch, just tattoo it on your body, and they will gladly give it to you.
My girlfriend's raising her eyebrows like, that's an idea.
If you met this person, you'd understand he will never regret this for the rest of his life.
I mean, if Monster would send me a lifetime supply of Monster for getting a tattoo of like Monster on the
unfortunately, they'd have to send that to so many different people.
So many people. I'd say idiots, but I'd be one of them. So. Okay, so which bands have you shared the stage with? Sort of which are the biggest bands you've shared the stage with, and which bands do you hope to share the stage with?
Probably the biggest artists that I've been on stage with were like kind of artists from more of the synthwave community. I got to open up for Danger, which Danger has always been a huge influence in my music. Like that was something I listened to in college before, you know, the big EDM boom. This was like, you know, really weird French dystopian electro, and I had never heard anything like it. And one of my first shows in Boston, where I now live, was opening up for Danger, and that was definitely a moment where I felt like I was, you know, heading towards where I wanted to be. And a year later, I opened up for Perturbator out here. That was a crazy show. You know, he's one of my idols. He's one of he's like one of the few like dark electronic artists that has broken past their initial genre placing, and you know, now he plays metal festivals. He's not a metal musician. His music has no fucking guitars in it, and he's playing metal festivals. That's awesome. I want to play Hellfest one day. That would be great. I'm like very in touch with the EDM world. Like EDM is where I draw most of my direct influence, but I would rather be an electronic artist that plays like Hellfest or like Bakken than like Electric Daisy Carnival, you know?
So let's say if you could be on stage with with a big industrial band tomorrow.
Health. I fucking love Health. I would love to go on tour with them if they're watching this for any crazy reason. Please just take me with you, or collab with me. I want to be on your next disco album. I think we can make great music. Even thinking bigger than that, Nine Inch Nails. Nine Inch Nails is, if I don't like the idea of choosing a favorite band because my taste in music is constantly shifting.
Oh yes,
and it's easier for me to pick like current favorites, but to say this is my favorite band of all time, or God forbid, this is the best band of all time by whatever stupid metric I decide to assign to it. But if I had to, gun to my head, it would be Nine Inch Nails. I've been listening to them for the longest. They have had the most consistent output in music, and that's probably who I would pick. So if I ever toured with them for any reason, would be, I don't know if I could get higher than that,
Yeah, I was gonna say
that would be my peak.
That is probably like the biggest claim to successful fame, is that you've been.
Yeah, it's basically cliche for me to say I want to tour with Nine Inch Nails. Like, it is not a creative answer. Nobody's patting me on the back for this one.
I mean, it could be worse. You could have said the Wiggles,
If there was a reality where the Wiggles wanted me to open up for them, I would definitely humor that idea.
I mean, if you could put a dark industrial spin on their music.
The greater question is, why did they feel they needed to approach me for this? Like, they would have to come to me. They had a plan for me. And they only know me for doing one thing. So somehow they saw that one thing and said, this is what we need. This is the direction the Wiggles should be going.
See, I mean, this is a danger if I ever made music, because I would just turn things like the cartoons, like, the Witch Doctor song, I'd turn that stuff into like nasty, crunchy industrial, and just...
It's fun.
Yeah, I just get so many evil looks from people, I reckon. So, which artists have you been listening to the most right now?
Let me see. I've been so most of like what I listen to is definitely kind of more in the EDM market. I still listen to like industrial stuff, like Moon Exis has been a big favorite of mine. I think the album they released this year is it's a fucking masterpiece. I love it. It's so good. And I've also had the pleasure of working with them this past year. So that's something you can look forward to.
Excellent.
A lot of different EDM artists that are kind of doing like the mid-tempo synthwave, dark synth, whatever. Tokyo Rose. God, I love Tokyo Rose. Just everything he releases is incredible. Cyberpunk, that Cyberpunk spelled without all of the vowels in it. He just dropped this EP called Hellbent. That's it's insane. It completely blew me away. I've been listening to it nonstop since it came out. Artist called Code Unit, who has almost no followers on Spotify or anything. This kid is a goddamn genius. Just rare you find people that are able to combine like masterful songwriting and understanding of music theory with heavy music like this. It's really unreal. I mentioned I like hardwave a lot, that genre that's kind of like trap and trance put together in a really heavy package. There's Dead Crow and Remnant.exe. They've been a really big favorite. Two other artists I just wanted to give a quick mention to. Deathtour is this like hip hop industrial punk artist from LA that I think they're breaking all the rules and doing some really incredible music, and everybody should check them out. I know that like clipping is very popular in the industrial world, and they should be, but I feel like a lot of people hear clipping and that's where they stop listening to like hip hop industrial type of stuff. And there's a whole world out there that I could go on for way longer than you have about that genre.
I mean, if you think there's any relevant bands like you say, where it's synthwave or any of the bands you've mentioned that you think don't get enough attention, then feel free to message them to me and I'll see what I can help them out. And that applies to anyone watching. Like if you've got, you know, if you've got bands that you think that are great, that need more attention, more help, then feel free to message the Elektro Vox page. I mean, I like Brian, I work 40 hours a week and I get stressed when I've got more than 2 reviews to do, right? So I can't promise.
I understand that.
I can't promise that I would ever do them quickly. I do have a coffee page though, so sometimes people send me a commission and I forget that I have it, so I'll end up with like 4 articles. I'm stressed out, and then I'll get like a commission for another one. I'm like, oh no.
Oh my god.
But it's good because
you're just as over your head as I am.
Yeah, but it's good though because like I get some little wild card bands that I would have never have known about, or and it's wonderful that I can put that out there for them, because I know some review websites, you know, they charge hundreds of pounds to, you know, to even think about covering a band, but that seems wrong to me. I mean, the whole Elektro Vox thing here is just literally promote people, get people out there, you know. There's nothing in it for me. So
just about one more I'm going to just mention, because he's very similar to like what I do, and like after becoming friends with this dude, I realized we have a lot of the same influences and interests, which kind of collated into this very specific sound of music, and that's Coffin, Kofin. He does, like, you know, that like the kind of similar like industrial bass style thing I do with like a bit of a metal edge to it. He is awesome, and nobody listens to him, but like anytime I show it to someone, they're like, holy shit, this is incredible, where has this been my whole life? So Coffin, definitely listen to Coffin.
Okay, I mean, if I forget, send some over to me. But
yeah, absolutely, you'd love it. You would love it.
Okay, so what life lessons has being in this sort of music taught you over the years, and what would you change about the scene if you could?
Don't half-ass music if you want to do it. If you really want to make music, you got to really put your nose to the grindstone and like learn, and not just like, you know, listen to music and try and like replicate it, like really kind of like get under the hood and understand how music works, how theory works, how to produce and how to mix songs well. You know, I kind of wish I could tell myself that like 10 years ago, because I was always I've been working on music since I was like 18. I'm 32 now, but I didn't actually make any progress until I had a moment where I was like, okay, I've been doing music for so long, it's not going anywhere, so why don't I like spend this year, this was like 2015 I think, where I just focus fully on music and see if it goes anywhere, and if it doesn't, you know, fuck it. You know, I tried to do music, it didn't work out, but I got signed with Blind Mice, and I started getting a little attention. I was like, okay, I might have something here, and I continued with it. Also, when I was in my rave years, like when I was listening to like dubstep and electro house, and that was kind of my thing. Don't get too sucked up in the party life if you can't. It was nice having like a whole bunch of group of friends, but you know, that distracted me from the whole music writing process. And once I determined in my life that this is what I want to do and I want to be the best at it, that's when I actually started making progress. I'm not the best at it, but I can't believe where I started and where I am now. And the second part of your question, what would I change about the scene if you could? Man, some of these older DJs, they just got to be accepting the newer music. Like, not everything has to be, you know, old Disarray and Cabaret Voltaire. People are making music today. People are making great music. And I think a lot of people in a specific generation need to be a little more open to new interpretations of what industrial is. Part of the reason that I marketed myself as an industrial artist and not as an EDM artist is because I love industrial goth culture. It's, you know, what I grew up in, and it's where my community is. And I wanted to, after spending all these years in EDM, I felt like I made a lot of discoveries about what type of heavy electronic music can be. And I wanted to bring that back into this world that I felt most comfortable in. I part of Morris Black, I wanted to be a bit of a disruptor, if I'm being honest. I knew that all these cool, dark EDM artists exist, but anytime someone hears EDM, they're like, oh, you're talking about like Skrillex and David Guetta, and they don't want to hear anything about it. And I kind of wanted to trick the entire industrial community at large into listening to EDM. And you know, when I was in San Francisco, I was like talking to a DJ, and they were telling me that, you know, they always wanted to play like this, like, you know, they love this kind of music, and you know, by making it and kind of marketing it as like a goth industrial thing, even like what I make is technically EDM, but I call it like industrial bass music because I want it's a branding more than a genre. It's saying like this is bass music for industrial people. And it's been amazing to see over the past 2 years. I'm not taking any credit for anything, but I have seen a huge influx of these artists that I only knew from SoundCloud. They were never getting plays in like industrial playlists. I hear it all the time. Like most DJs I follow, like they're gonna work music from that like weird subsect of SoundCloud EDM into their own industrial playlist. Like I just wanted to see industrial as a whole like be open to new interpretations. We're always going to have the retro stuff, we're always going to have like retro revivalists, and you know that's always going to be the way it is, but I just want to see more of, you know, the different ways of achieving this aesthetic and this whole brand. And I just so ecstatic that I made at least a little bit of a difference in achieving that goal.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely working. Definitely working. And like you say, when it comes to DJs, I mean, yeah, there's only so many times I can listen to Ministry on the dance floor before I'm bored.
Yeah.
You know, it's like a lot of people, even the artists themselves, they really sort of put down their sort of early 2000s work, you know, where they're sort of, I call it rave industrial, you know, like where you've got samples from, you know, those films that are always sampled.
Yeah.
And then they're the dance floor fillers. And they're the dance floor fillers for a reason, because, you know, when they're played, you see the crowd, they're on the dance floor, right? And they're having a great time. But it seems like some DJs don't want to play that anymore. And the artists themselves say like, oh no, we've matured away from that now. It's like, okay, yes. But like this is I don't know if people are going to scream and shout at me here, but I would call that sort of the modern day golden age sort of dance floor industrial. So
yeah,
with your music, it's great because it's kind of, with you and several other artists, of course, it's bringing back that sort of revival to that sort of scene where this music gets people on the dance floor again. Yeah, it might not have the sampled things out of films and TV.
I'm not putting any fucking Full Metal Jacket
No,
I swear to God, I promise you I will never do that.
I was gonna say track that shall not be named. Personally, I love every single track that has a mix from a sample from that in. But
Me too, but we're done.
But we're done, yeah. So obviously when everyone hears your signature sound, they're like, crap, this must be a Morris Black song. You know, there's always people on the dance floor.
I love when people say that. It's impossible for me to hear music with my own ears, which is one of those like existential crises I have on a regular basis. And so I never know if my music has its own signature sound. So whenever people say that, I'm like, oh, thank God, I'm doing something right. I'm a little consistent.
It's also like my buddy Johnny, who is Seraphim System. He does.
Oh yeah.
He does incredible stuff. Obviously similar to yours as well. I think he's gone on a little bit of retirement now, sadly.
I was about to say I haven't listened to him since like I was really into electro-industrial stuff.
Yeah, I've been really trying to push his music with Elektro Vox over the years, but there's only so many times I can say the same thing before people go, just shut up. So I'm sort of like trying to do that thing where I'm just trying to push new bands, but sometimes people don't want to hear it, do they? But yeah, I completely get your points there. And just finally, do you have stuff to say to your fans? Like anything to say to your fans?
I guess I'm just grateful that this whole thing was always kind of an experiment. Like I said before, this was about, you know, trying to say something new and industrial while still paying tribute to, you know, where like the music that I kind of grew up with, because that's, you know, that's just in my blood. That's who I am. I was, you know, a big Combi Christ and Funker Vote fan back in the day, and you know, that's always, I don't listen to them as much anymore, especially not Combi Christ. That fuck them. But but that's always just like going to be a part of my musical understanding. And I guess I didn't want to do what they did. I wanted to have my own voice and introduce new things to this world. And I'm grateful that you all joined me for this ride and that you understand and appreciate what I'm doing. And I was going to give up on music, you know, 4 years ago, just throw in the towel completely. And the fans I've made on this journey have made it so I don't think I'm ever going to give this up. I really don't.
Well, I hope you don't. All right, well, Brian, it's been an absolute pleasure speaking to you. Thank you for joining Elektro Vox today. And I hope you guys enjoyed too.
Yep. Thanks so much for having me, man.